the outbreak of the First World War, my father was still a reservist in the Gloucester Volunteers, the Rifle Brigade, and there was a possibility that he would have been called up for national service. About the same time, a shop half a mile away became vacant or let, and they applied for that, and they got it, with a view that should my father be called up for war service, my mother would have a living. We would be able to let the house that he had built, and the rent from that would pay the mortgage, and my mother would be secure in the fact that had anything happened to my father, she would have had a living for herself and for us two children. By then I had got a brother. And of course, there was a rationing system, and everything, you had coupons for everything. And I well remember sorting out these coupons, which were taken from people's ration books. By then I could count and count very well, although I was only about 8 or 9 perhaps, and sort all these ration coupons out, and they were taken to the food office, which was at Baker's Hill in Colford. The controller was Mr. Blanche, Mr. W.J. Blanche, whose son later became a chemist and was very well known in Colford as Frankie Blanche, the chemist. But all these coupons had to be accounted for, every item. What you must realise is that everything then, when we were at the shop, was weighed out. And so the rations became 2 ounces of perhaps tea, perhaps half a pound of sugar, which was weighed out and packed by hand. There was nothing pre-packed. Sugar had to be packed by hand. And the most interesting thing, I think, with weighing up then was dried fruit. You had a different coloured paper for raisins. That was purple. You had a yellow one for sultanas and a muddy coloured one for currants. But everything was neatly folded over. You folded it down the middle. Then you turned it up, you tucked your ends in, then you turned it up on end and you tucked the other ends in like that, very neatly, and it was a nice little parcel.
So you didn't have an actual paper bag, you made it from a flat sheet of paper? Oh, you
didn't have paper bags. No. You made it from the various sheets of paper. There were paper bags for sweets, but then kiddos only had a ha'porth of sweets, so you made them out of newspaper, little cones, the sweets in there. So I think I could still make one now. And another thing, I think the most intriguing thing was treacle, which came in a barrel, and there was a sort of a spigot thing which you pulled out. People came with their jam jars for £1 of treacle, and it would come out like a long snake. And we were told that we didn't have to touch that. There was one thing we didn't have to touch. But and another thing, we used to get pigs' heads come from Alpasses in Berkeley. They used to come over on the train to Milkwall Station. You'd get a sack of them. You'd get about 6 pigs' heads. My mother used to make brawn out of these pigs' heads. Of course, they all had to be cleaned. Well, one of the jobs was cleaning the pig's ears out. They went into the brawn as well. And because my hand wasn't very big, I was the one that got the job of cleaning out the pig's ears. And it would be cooked and pressed, put in the tin, in the mould and unmoulded. And we used to have a queue halfway down the Milkwall for some of Mrs. Polton's brawn. Of course, it was no ration. So that was that. That was done on a Monday. That was Monday's job.
So you would have been expected to know what all your customers' regular orders were then, just after the First World War.
Yes, because most households then, all the baking was done at home. So you knew that they would want flour, margarine, currants or sultanas or whatever, perhaps some suet to make suet duff, roly-poly pudding or whatever. And yes, you were expected to more or less know what everybody would need. But then everybody more or less needed the same weekly ration or amount. Most of them paid their bills on a Saturday. They were usually paid on either a Friday night or a Saturday. They came and they paid their bill, and then they started their account for the next week. I'm afraid there was nothing like it just today at the supermarket, going and splashing out with your money, because they didn't have the money to splash out with.
So what would the range of shops have been in the village where you lived, in the Forest of Dean?
Well, we were the only grocery shop in that part of the district, and they used to come from Gorsty Knoll, parts of Milkwall, Colway. In fact, it was not an unknown thing to be knocked up in the night. Someone had got pneumonia and was having a linseed poultice, and it was a case of go down to Polton's, they'll serve you. They'll get up if you need it. And it was not unusual to be knocked up at night if anyone was ill and they wanted.
And ask for linseed oil?
Ask for linseed meal to make a linseed poultice, yes.